So before we move on to Islamic art, I want to remind you about the Buddhist essay on your unit test. I also want to remind you about your long essay, which is due the same day as the test. Sorry about that, but I actually think you're going to find that writing the long essay is a very good way of studying for the unit test. And finally, I want to introduce the Islamic art portion of this unit by giving you the Islamic art essay that will appear on the test. Now, I'm emphasizing the word essay because unlike Buddhist art, Islamic art appears frequently in AP art history, image-based, and general multiple choice questions. As always, I'm going to record a test review podcast that will give you a good idea of what kind of questions the College Board, and therefore Ms. Jacobs and I, are going to ask on the unit test. So here is the Buddhist art essay question that will appear on your test. You saw this before. I sent it to you in a message. Visual representations of deities and holy personages is a feature of religious beliefs and practices throughout the world. This is, by the way, a comparative context question, so I'll be asking you for one European and one non-European example. I've rewritten it. Select and fully identify one Buddhist example. Using specific visual evidence, analyze the work in relation to the religious beliefs and practices within the culture. You will not be able to bring in notes or a photo of the image, but you can pick any Buddha image that you wish. As I've mentioned before, I strongly recommend that you get to know the Great Stupa at Sanchi and at least one, or ideally 2 or 3 Buddhist images that you could talk about on a cultural context essay. By the time you've written your long essay, you should know the Great Stupa of Sanchi well. By the way, it's the only Buddhist image that I've found in any past AP exams. Now, I don't have all past AP exams, so some others may have shown up. If you get a Buddha, surely you'll recognize that. So again, it is your choice which image you want to use, but I'm going to run quickly through some works that appear in your book and would, in my opinion, be good candidates as essay subjects, just to make your lives a little easier. Lots of clear Buddhist imagery in this statue. This is one of a couple of images I'm including from Gandhara. I left out the and in that Gandhara in India, now Pakistan. This is the area that was influenced by Alexander the Great and was the place from which Buddhism traveled to China. I got Gandhara spelled right on this one. Sorry. This work would give you an opportunity to tell some of the Buddha's story. This is an image of his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. This Chinese work would enable you to discuss the Buddhist pantheon, that is, multiple more godlike Buddhas. We talked about those in the last lecture, and also the role of bodhisattvas, which are kind of interesting and weird characters. Pure Land Buddhism would also offer you plenty to talk about. This is another Chinese image. This is a Japanese Buddhist image. Here again, you have a Buddha and bodhisattvas. Lots you could say about Buddhism. And remember, for any of these, you can talk generally about Buddhism, the story of Buddha. This is your opportunity to download on paper some of the information you've picked up. This image also gives you an opportunity to talk about those interesting flaming mandorlas. And you know, this is a favorite of mine. I think the story about how the Thai king changes the Emerald Buddha's clothes is very interesting. Remember that although it's called the Emerald Buddha, it's actually made out of jade. Okay, you've had this before, but just to remind you about your long essay question, this is sacred spaces. And the very first lecture in this unit, I talked about sacred spaces, went back to those 4 characteristics of sacred spaces. The design and appearance of these spaces vary greatly. Fully identify 2 specific sacred spaces. Again, the original question says one has to be from the non-European tradition. You will know a lot of cathedrals soon. And of course, you've also encountered Greek temples, but they're part of the European tradition. For this essay, you want to talk about the Great Stupa at Sanchi, and you can choose among 3 mosques, the Dome of the Rock, the Great Mosque at Kairouan, Tunisia, or the Great Mosque of Cordoba. By the way, if you wanted to do the Great Mosque of Damascus, I wouldn't object. I just thought these were particularly easy ones to do. And then finally, I'm moving on to the test essay question on the mosque. This dates back from the period when the AP exam had 5-minute questions. This one's going to be pretty straightforward. You're in the slide show a mosque and its plan. In what ways does the mosque accommodate the religious requirements of Islam? This is basically a question asking you to explain what is expected of Muslims and how the mosque helps them meet that those expectations. And this is a great image of a mosque plan, really better than anything that appears in your book, although it's from the College Board. And if you understand what those various terms mean, this question will really answer itself. So good luck. You will need to understand these terms from the mosque, and that's where we're heading now.